The leather-bound intelligence dossier struck Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring's mahogany desk with a heavy thump on that crisp October morning in 1942, the pages still warm from the courier's hand. He flipped open the report from his military intelligence chief, his eyes scanning the latest assessments of American bomber production capabilities. When he reached the section detailing Boeing's projections for B-17 Flying Fortress manufacturing, a deep, rumbling laugh erupted from his chest, echoing through the ornate halls of Caron Hall, his palatial hunting estate north of Berlin. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The Americans believe they can mass-produce heavy bombers like Ford produces automobiles, Göring scoffed to his assembled staff officers, his corpulent frame shaking with mirth as he slapped the report against his desk. This Boeing B-17 they tout as invincible, let them try to build thousands of these complex machines. They will discover that strategic bombers require precision engineering, not assembly line tricks. His jeweled fingers drummed dismissively across the intelligence estimates showing American plans to produce over 12,000 flying fortresses. Pure fantasy. Desperate propaganda to mask their industrial incompetence. What the Reichsmarschall catastrophically failed to comprehend in his arrogance was that thousands of miles away in Seattle, Washington, a quietly determined engineer named Philip G. Johnson was already revolutionizing heavy bomber production at Boeing's sprawling Plant 2 facility. The 48-year-old production director, a man who had spent 2 decades perfecting aircraft manufacturing techniques, was methodically dismantling every assumption about what was possible in strategic bomber construction. Within 3 years, American factories would not merely meet their ambitious B-17 production goals, they would exceed them spectacularly, building 12,731 flying fortresses that would darken the skies over Europe and systematically dismantle the Third Reich's war machine from 25,000 feet. The audacious American declaration that triggered such German contempt had come during a classified War Department briefing in June 1942. Brigadier General Kenneth Walker, Chief of Bomber Operations Planning, had stood before a room of industrial leaders and military strategists at the Pentagon and delivered a statement that defied conventional wisdom. Gentlemen, we require the immediate capacity to produce not hundreds, but thousands of B-17 flying fortresses. We need the ability to darken European skies with American heavy bombers, to strike the industrial heart of Nazi Germany with such overwhelming force that their war production collapses under the weight of high explosive ordnance. The reaction among even America's most optimistic planners bordered on disbelief. The numbers seemed to mock industrial reality itself. In 1940, Boeing had delivered merely 42 B-17 flying fortresses to the Army Air Corps, each one requiring approximately 47,000 man-hours of skilled labor to construct. The B-17E model, the first truly combat-ready variant, possessed 347,000 individual parts, weighed 65,000 pounds fully loaded, and demanded tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch. This was not an automobile that could be stamped and welded on a moving assembly line. This was the most complex flying machine ever conceived for mass production, for 1,200 horsepower Wright Cyclone engines, 13.50 caliber machine guns, oxygen systems for 10 crew members, sophisticated bomb-aiming equipment, and armor plating protecting vital crew positions. Yet the War Department was demanding not dozens, not hundreds, but thousands of these technological marvels, delivered at a pace that would require fundamentally reimagining what industrial mass production could achieve. Traditional aircraft manufacturing wisdom held that skilled craftsmen required months to master the intricate work of bomber assembly. Philip Johnson and his counterparts at Boeing, Douglas, and Lockheed would have mere weeks to transform ordinary Americans, farmers, shopkeepers, housewives, and factory workers with no aviation experience whatsoever, into precision aircraft builders capable of tolerances that would have challenged peacetime professional standards. Philip Johnson emerged as the principal architect of this seemingly impossible transformation. When asked by Army Air Forces Commanding General Henry Hap Arnold who could possibly orchestrate such massive B-17 production expansion, Procurement Chief General Oliver P. Eccles responded without hesitation, "There's only one man who can do it, Phil Johnson at Boeing. He doesn't just understand aircraft manufacturing, He thinks in terms of production systems. He sees the entire industrial organism, not just individual airplanes. Johnson had quietly declined lucrative offers from aviation competitors to remain at Boeing, bringing with him an almost religious devotion to production efficiency and quality control that would prove decisive in the coming industrial battle. The transformation began with breathtaking urgency and unprecedented scope. By December 1942, just 6 months after General Walker's audacious declaration, Boeing's Seattle facilities were producing 16 B-17 Flying Fortresses daily, a production rate that would have seemed pure fantasy mere months earlier. The company's Plant 2, originally designed to produce 38 bombers monthly, underwent rapid expansion that would ultimately see it covering 1.8 million square feet of manufacturing space. Douglas Aircraft opened a massive B-17 production facility in Long Beach, California, eventually designated the C-1 plant. Lockheed Vega constructed an entirely new bomber factory in Burbank, designated Plant B-1, specifically for Flying Fortress production. But raw factory space meant nothing without the revolutionary production techniques that Johnson and his team pioneered. Traditional aircraft manufacturing had relied on master craftsmen building planes and stationary jigs, with workers moving around static airframes. Johnson inverted this entire concept, creating the first true moving assembly line for heavy bomber production. B-17 fuselages began moving through production stations on massive wheeled dollies, with specialized work teams performing specific tasks as the airframe progressed. Wing assembly occurred on separate lines, with completed wing sections transported via overhead cranes to mate with fuselages at precise junction points. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The Boeing team developed what they termed production modules, breaking the B-17's construction into 47 major assemblies that could be built simultaneously by different work crews, then integrated into the final aircraft with unprecedented speed. The nose section, built entirely separately, contained the bombardier's station, navigator's table, and forward gun positions. The radio compartment became a complete module installed as a single unit. The tail gunner's position, bomb bay doors, and even the complex electrical systems were pre-assembled and tested before installation into the main airframe. Quality control obsessed Johnson to a degree his colleagues found almost neurotic. He established an inspection regime that exceeded military specifications, reasoning that bombers failing over Germany killed American crews while bombers failing during testing merely delayed production. Every B-17 underwent a meticulous 47-point inspection before its first flight. Wing attach points received magnetic particle inspection to detect microscopic cracks. Engine mounts were stress-tested beyond operational requirements. Oxygen systems underwent pressure testing at simulated altitudes exceeding 35,000 feet. Electrical systems faced diagnostic protocols checking thousands of individual connections. This fanatical attention to detail produced remarkable results. By March 1943, Boeing's defect rate had fallen to just 0.7%, meaning 993 of every 1,000 Flying Fortresses delivered met or exceeded all specifications on first inspection. This stood in stark contrast to early production, when defect rates had approached 15%, requiring extensive rework. The improvement came from Johnson's systematic approach to worker training, his insistence on specialized tooling, and his revolutionary concept of built-in quality rather than inspected-in quality. The Nazi leadership's dismissal of American heavy bomber production capabilities stemmed from a toxic combination of ideological blindness and fundamental misunderstanding of democratic industrial mobilization. Oberst Friedrich Wilhelm von Mellenthin, German military intelligence officer assigned to assess American production capacity from 1940 through 1943, had sent increasingly desperate reports describing Boeing's Seattle expansion with growing alarm. His November 1942 cable warned in unmistakable terms, American heavy bomber production approaches levels previously thought physically impossible. There be 17 Flying Fortresses appearing in numbers that suggest systematic mass production. We must revise all previous estimates upward by factors of 3 to 5. Berlin's response to von Mellenthin's accurate intelligence ranged from dismissal to accusations of defeatism. Göring himself scrawled across one report, "American claims are propaganda. They cannot mass-produce strategic bombers. Their industrial system lacks the precision discipline required for such complex machines." This ideological blindness would prove catastrophic. When von Mellenthin secured actual photographs of Boeing's expanded Seattle facilities in early 1943, showing assembly lines with multiple B-17s in various stages of construction, Luftwaffe intelligence analysts dismissed the images as composite forgeries designed to intimidate German leadership. The prejudice permeated every level of Nazi strategic thinking. When reports arrived describing women working on B-17 assembly lines, German analysts interpreted this as proof of American desperation rather than democratic mobilization. The concept that housewives and shopgirls could master precision bomber assemblies seemed to confirm Nazi assumptions about American industrial weakness rather than challenging their fundamental strategic assessments. Luftwaffe intelligence reports from mid-1943 contained dismissive phrases like "employment of untrained female workers indicates collapse of skilled labor availability and quality must be deteriorating despite American propaganda claims." Hermann Göring's personal contempt for American industrial capability reached almost comical levels during a February 1943 meeting with Adolf Hitler at the Berghof. When presented with updated intelligence estimates suggesting Boeing alone might produce 3,000 B-17s annually, Göring exploded in rage. "This is absurd. I have personally inspected our bomber production facilities. We employ Germany's finest engineers and most skilled craftsmen. The Americans send women and farm boys to build strategic bombers? Impossible. Their planes will fall from the sky, not from our fighters but from their own shoddy construction." Hitler, equally deluded by ideological conviction, agreed completely. "The Americans are a mongrel race," he declared with characteristic venom. "Jews, Negroes, immigrants, they cannot achieve German precision. Let them build their inferior bombers. Each one will be a coffin for its crew." This catastrophic miscalculation would cost Germany the war and millions of lives, as American B-17s proved not merely numerous but devastatingly effective, with loss rates far lower than German intelligence predicted and operational availability far higher than Nazi planners believed possible. The scale of German miscalculation became apparent through captured Luftwaffe intelligence documents recovered after the war. In October 1942, Göring's staff estimated total American B-17 production through 1943 would not exceed 2,400 aircraft. The actual figure would reach 6,418 flying fortresses delivered in 1943 alone, nearly 3 times German estimates. More critically, Luftwaffe planners assumed American bombers would require extensive maintenance, with operational availability rates around 40%. Actual 8th Air Force B-17 availability consistently exceeded 70%, meaning far more bombers reached German targets than Nazi defenders anticipated. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Boeing's Seattle Plant 2 embodied American industrial ambition transformed into concrete, steel, and revolutionary manufacturing philosophy. Construction had begun in earnest in August 1941, 4 months before Pearl Harbor, on land that had previously served as farmland south of Boeing Field. The facility that emerged would become the world's most productive heavy bomber factory, a cathedral of American industrial might spanning 1.8 million square feet under a single roof. The main assembly building stretched nearly half a mile in length, with 40-foot ceilings accommodating the B-17's 74-foot wingspan. Overhead crane systems could lift entire wing sections weighing 7,000 pounds with precision measured in fractions of an inch. Philip Johnson's revolutionary production approach centered on what he termed progressive assembly flow, a concept that broke every conventional wisdom about building complex aircraft. Traditional manufacturers believed strategic bombers required stationary construction, with skilled craftsmen circling the airframe performing intricate work. Johnson inverted this paradigm entirely, creating the first true moving assembly line for 4-engine heavy bombers. B-17 fuselages entered the production line as bare aluminum frames and emerged 17 days later as complete, flight-ready aircraft ready for delivery to Army Air Force's acceptance officers. The transformation process began at Station 1, where workers joined the forward, center, and aft fuselage sections, major assemblies built in separate areas of the plant. Station 2 saw installation of the main wing spar, the critical structural element carrying flight loads. Station 3 through 7 involved systems installation, electrical wiring harnesses containing 8 miles of wire per aircraft, hydraulic lines operating landing gear and bomb bay doors, oxygen distribution systems feeding 10 crew positions. Station 8 through 12 saw armament installation, 13.50 caliber Browning machine guns, ammunition feed systems, turret mechanisms for dorsal, ventral, and tail positions. The most critical operation occurred at Station 13, where completed wing sections mated with fuselages. This operation required precision tolerances of 0.003 inches across attachment points spanning 74 feet, a feat many aviation experts had declared impossible to achieve in mass production. Johnson's team developed specialized hydraulic jigs that aligned wings and fuselage sections with unprecedented accuracy, allowing workers to drive thousands of rivets through pre-drilled holes that matched perfectly despite being manufactured in separate areas of the factory. The wing mating process, which had required 47 hours in early 1942, took just 4 hours by mid-1943 thanks to continuous refinement of tools and techniques. Engine installation at Station 14 through 16 represented another marvel of systematic production. Each B-17 required 4 Wright R-1820-97 Cyclone radial engines, massive 9-cylinder powerplants weighing 1,315 pounds each and producing 1,200 horsepower. Boeing developed modular engine mounts allowing complete powerplant assemblies, engine, cowling, propeller, ignition system, to be installed as single units in just 6 hours per engine. Workers suspended these assemblies from overhead cranes, positioning them precisely against firewall mounts while other crew members connected fuel, oil, and electrical systems from behind the firewall. Final stations involved interior completion, installing oxygen regulators for high-altitude flight, radio equipment allowing communication across hundreds of miles, sophisticated Norden bombsight that represented over $10,000 of the B-17's $238,000 unit cost, and crew positions from pilot seats to tail gunner station. Station 22 saw final inspection, where quality control specialists spent 16 hours examining every system, testing every function, and verifying thousands of individual specifications before signing off for flight testing. Initial production results at Boeing's expanded facility were sobering, almost catastrophic. The first B-17E completed under the new assembly line process in March 1942 required complete disassembly when flight testing revealed hydraulic system failures throughout. Quality control identified 347 defects requiring correction. Production efficiency measured just 22% of theoretical capacity, meaning Boeing was using 4 times the expected man-hours per aircraft. By June 1942, Plant 2 was producing only 38 Flying Fortresses monthly against promises of 125. Critics within the Army Air Forces questioned whether mass production of strategic bombers was achievable at all. Philip Johnson responded not with excuses but with ruthless systematic analysis. He established defect tracking systems identifying root causes for every failure. When hydraulic line failures occurred repeatedly, investigation revealed workers were over-torquing fittings, cracking the aluminum threads. Solution: torque-limiting wrenches calibrated to precise specifications, distributed to every worker performing hydraulic assembly. When electrical system failures plagued early aircraft, analysis showed wire harnesses were being stretched during installation, breaking connections. Solution: preformed harnesses built to exact lengths on specialized jigs, eliminating field modification. Boeing's engineering team developed over 1,200 specialized tools specifically for B-17 production. Rivet guns with adjustable pressure settings prevented overdriving that weakened joints. Drill jigs ensured holes aligned perfectly across multi-part assemblies. Specialized wrenches accessed fasteners in confined spaces without damaging surrounding components. These tools transformed complex skilled tasks into procedural operations that workers with minimal training could perform consistently and correctly. The breakthrough came in October 1942, 8 months into the expanded production program. Boeing Plant 2 produced 102 B-17 Flying Fortresses that month, exceeding 100 aircraft for the first time. More importantly, defect rates had fallen to 3.2%, meaning 96.8% of bombers passed initial inspection without requiring rework. By December, monthly production reached 155 Flying Fortresses. By March 1943, 185 aircraft rolled off Seattle assembly lines. The mathematical progression was undeniable. Boeing had cracked the code of mass-producing strategic bombers. The crescendo came in April 1944, when Boeing's Seattle facilities produced 362 B-17G Flying Fortresses in a single month, more than 12 aircraft daily, one completed every 120 minutes around the clock. This single factory was outproducing the entire German heavy bomber industry. But Boeing represented just one of 3 B-17 manufacturers. Douglas Aircraft's Long Beach facility produced 213 Flying Fortresses in April 1944. Lockheed Vega's Burbank plant contributed another 144. Combined American B-17 production that month reached 719 strategic bombers, nearly 24 four-engine heavy bombers daily. German fighter pilots first confronted the reality of American B-17 production during the Tunisia campaign in late 1942 and early 1943. Hauptmann Johannes Steinhoff, commanding Jagdgeschwader 77, recorded in his combat diary with growing alarm, November 1942, encountered formation of 18 American B-17s over Bizerta. Heavy defensive armament made close approach suicidal. December, American bomber formations now number 30 to 40 aircraft. January 1943, formations exceeding 60 bombers with fighter escort. Where are all these aircraft coming from? The revelation accelerated through 1943 with mathematical precision. The first American raid on Germany itself came January 27, 1943, 64 B-17s attacking U-boat construction facilities at Wilhelmshaven. By August, during the catastrophic Schweinfurt-Regensburg mission, the 8th Air Force dispatched 376 Flying Fortresses in a single day against ball-bearing and aircraft production facilities. Though German fighters shot down 60 B-17s, a devastating 16% loss rate, American factories replaced those losses within 10 days while simultaneously increasing overall bomber strength in England. The mathematics became inescapable during Big Week February 20 to 25, 1944, when 8th and 15th Air Forces mounted Operation Argument, systematic attacks against German aircraft production facilities. Over 6 days, American forces flew 3,800 heavy bomber sorties, the vast majority in B-17 Flying Fortresses. The Luftwaffe lost between 355 and 450 fighters destroyed, but more catastrophically lost approximately 160 irreplaceable veteran pilots with over 100 combat missions experience. General Adolf Galland, commanding German fighter forces, reported to Göring with barely concealed desperation, "We are losing the attrition battle." Germany produces 1,100 fighters monthly while losing 1,400. America produces 2,800 fighters monthly while losing 450. But more critically, they are producing 800 heavy bombers monthly, B-17s and B-24s we cannot replace. Major Heinz Bahr, one of Germany's highest-scoring aces with 220 victories, described a mission over Brunswick in January 1944 with haunting precision. The bomber stream stretched from horizon to horizon. I counted at least 450 B-17 Flying Fortresses in combat boxes stacked from 22,000 to 28,000 feet. Our Staffel had 11 fighters available. 11 against 450. We attacked anyway because orders demanded it, but the outcome was predetermined. Their defensive fire was a wall of .50 caliber tracers. We shot down 3 bombers and lost 6 fighters. The mathematics are impossible. By 1944, American B-17 production reached staggering proportions that defied comprehension. That year alone, factories produced 6,043 flying fortresses, more than 500 monthly, 16 daily. Combined with 1943 production, America had built over 12,000 B-17s in just 2 years. The disparity went far beyond mere numbers. Each flying fortress carried 4,000 to 8,000 pounds of bombs depending on mission range, defensive armament consisting of 13.50 caliber machine guns with 11,000 rounds of ammunition, oxygen systems supporting 10 crew members at 30,000 feet, sophisticated navigation equipment including radio compass and radar bombing systems. German bomber forces, by contrast, were evaporating. The Heinkel He-177, Germany's only operational 4-engine heavy bomber, suffered catastrophic engine reliability problems. Of 1,169 produced throughout the entire war, fewer than 200 ever flew operational missions. The Luftwaffe's medium bomber force of Junkers Ju-88s and Heinkel He-111s could not reach England from German bases, carry meaningful bomb loads, or survive increasingly sophisticated Allied air defenses. By mid-1944, the Luftwaffe had effectively abandoned strategic bombing entirely, converting bomber units to fighter squadrons in desperate attempts to stem American daylight raids. Boeing's Seattle facility was producing 12 B-17s daily by May 1944, each aircraft representing 47,000 man-hours of labor compressed through revolutionary manufacturing techniques into just 17 days production time. Douglas Aircraft's Long Beach complex, which had employed 160 workers in 1940, now employed 42,000 workers across 3 shifts operating around the clock. Lockheed Vega achieved production of 1 flying fortress every 8 hours while simultaneously implementing 1,847 combat-driven modifications improving aircraft survivability and bombing accuracy. Supporting industries matched this breathtaking pace with equal achievement. Wright Aeronautical Corporation produced 55,523 R-1820 Cyclone engines under intensely demanding specifications, each powerplant requiring 74,000 individual parts machined to tolerances measured in 10,000ths of an inch. Hamilton Standard manufactured 24,000 constant-speed propellers, complex mechanisms adjusting blade pitch automatically during flight. Sperry Gyroscope delivered 13,000 turret systems incorporating electric motors, ammunition feeds, and sophisticated gun sights. The entire American industrial ecosystem had reorganized around heavy bomber production with unprecedented coordination and efficiency. The transformation of America's workforce for B-17 production shattered every Nazi preconception about democratic industrial capability. Women, comprising less than 2% of Boeing's workforce in 1941, represented 47% by 1943, 21,000 women among 44,600 total employees at Seattle facilities. At Douglas Long Beach, women held 38% of positions, including precision roles German engineers insisted required male strength and temperament. These weren't unskilled laborers performing menial tasks. Women operated precision drilling equipment, assembled complex electrical systems, performed critical quality inspection, and even served as flight test observers. Dorothy Harrison, a 23-year-old former schoolteacher, became Boeing's first female wing assembly supervisor in November 1942, managing a crew of 47 workers installing control surfaces and fuel systems. Her team's defect rate measured 0.4%, lower than any other wing assembly crew in the factory. When asked how a woman with no engineering background could supervise complex aircraft assembly, Harrison responded simply, "I follow the engineering specifications exactly, train my workers thoroughly, and inspect every operation personally." Gender is irrelevant to precision manufacturing. Francis Martinez, a Mexican-American riveter at Douglas Long Beach, drove 8,400 rivets per shift on B-17 fuselage sections with 99.7% accuracy, meaning only 25 rivets per shift required replacement. Her productivity exceeded male riveters by 15% while maintaining superior quality. Boeing redesigned pneumatic rivet guns with lighter aluminum housings and improved balance, inadvertently creating tools that reduced operator fatigue regardless of gender. These ergonomic improvements increased average riveting speed by 23% across all workers. German intelligence interpreted female employment in strategic bomber production as unmistakable evidence of American desperation. A captured Luftwaffe intelligence assessment from July 1943 stated with confidence, "Enemy reliance on female workers indicates exhaustion of male labor reserves. Quality deterioration is inevitable. We should expect increasing reports of American bomber mechanical failures, structural defects, and systems malfunctions." The reality proved exactly opposite. B-17 mechanical reliability improved dramatically through 1943 and 1944 as female workers, trained in systematic quality procedures, consistently outperformed the rush training of early male hires. As American B-17 production soared to unprecedented heights, Germany retreated into desperate fantasy and increasingly futile countermeasures. Hermann Göring authorized the Jaeger program in February 1944, attempting to disperse fighter production into 729 separate underground and camouflaged facilities to protect against American bombing. The results were catastrophic. Production coordination collapsed as components manufactured in scattered locations failed to arrive when needed. Quality control became impossible when airframe sections came from different facilities with no unified oversight. Transportation between dispersed sites consumed fuel Germany couldn't spare and time Germany didn't have. The most horrific aspect of German desperation was the widespread use of slave labor in aircraft production. By mid-1944, over 40% of German aviation workers were forced laborers, concentration camp prisoners, prisoners of war, and civilians from occupied territories working under armed guard. At the underground Mittelbau-Dora facility producing V-2 rockets and jet engine components, 60,000 prisoners endured conditions so brutal that 20,000 died from exhaustion, starvation, disease, and deliberate murder. These enslaved workers systematically sabotaged production, introducing deliberate defects that caused catastrophic failures. A single sabotaged batch of fasteners could ground an entire fighter squadron. Meanwhile, American innovation accelerated at remarkable pace. Boeing developed the B-17G model incorporating a twin-.50 caliber chin turret addressing frontal attack vulnerability identified in combat. From initial combat reports to production aircraft took just 74 days, a timeline impossible in German industrial systems. When Pacific operations required extended range, Boeing engineers developed Tokyo tanks, additional fuel cells and bomb base spaces, increasing B-17 range by 800 miles. Field modification teams could install these tanks in operational aircraft within 48 hours. The feedback loop between combat experience and production improvements achieved unprecedented efficiency. 8th Air Force combat reports reached Boeing engineering within 72 hours via coded teletype. Proposed modifications underwent testing at Wright Field within 2 weeks. Approved changes appeared on production aircraft within 45 days. This systematic integration of combat lessons with manufacturing capability gave American bombers continuously improving survivability while German aircraft remained static, their designers isolated from front-line realities by bureaucratic dysfunction and ideological interference. June 6, 1944, D-Day, demonstrated the complete culmination of American B-17 production supremacy. Operation Overlord's air component employed 3,467 heavy bombers, the vast majority being flying fortresses, attacking coastal defenses, transportation networks, and German reinforcement routes. The Luftwaffe managed just 319 sorties on D-Day, a 10-to-1 disadvantage that rendered German air opposition virtually irrelevant. Between January and June 1944, preparatory bombing operations dropped 195,000 tons of ordnance on German-occupied France, with B-17s delivering the majority targeting precision objectives like railway marshalling yards and bridge approaches. The transport of airborne divisions alone required more aircraft than Germany's entire remaining transport fleet. C-47 Skytrans dropping paratroopers and glider combinations landed entire artillery batteries behind German lines using aviation assets that dwarfed Luftwaffe capabilities. but the B-17s provided the strategic hammer, systematically destroying German ability to mass forces against beachheads through relentless interdiction bombing that isolated the Normandy battlefield. By December 1944, individual 8th Air Force missions routinely involved 1,200 to 1,500 heavy bombers, predominantly flying fortresses, escorted by 800 to 1,000 fighters. These raids delivered 3,000 to 4,000 tons of high explosives in single operations, more tonnage than the entire Luftwaffe dropped on Britain during any month of the Blitz. P-51 Mustang escorts possessed sufficient range to accompany bombers to Berlin and beyond, performance matching any German fighter, and existed in quantities that made losses strategically irrelevant. German pilots called American fighters the plague of Indians, swarming everywhere, impossible to escape, gradually bleeding the Luftwaffe to death through unsustainable attrition. As defeat approached with mathematical certainty, even committed Nazis began acknowledging the production catastrophe. Joseph Goebbels wrote in his diary, December 1944, Göring's repeated assurances about matching American bomber production now appear either deliberate deception or delusional fantasy. We face the world's greatest industrial power with rhetoric and desperation. Their material superiority crushes our tactical skill and fighting spirit through sheer overwhelming weight. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, assessing Normandy defenses before D-Day, told staff officers with characteristic bluntness, "The Americans will arrive with such material superiority that no defensive position can hold. When their bombers finish preparatory attacks, when their naval guns complete bombardment, their infantry will advance behind more tanks than we possess in all of France. We fight industrial capacity with courage. Courage is insufficient." Even Adolf Hitler, in rare moments of clarity during deteriorating final months, admitted the catastrophic miscalculation. In January 1945 meeting with Armaments Minister Albert Speer, Hitler stated with uncharacteristic honesty, "We should have believed von Mellenthin's intelligence assessments about American production potential." Their industrial capacity proved decisive. While we built hundreds, they constructed tens of thousands. We cannot win through fighting spirit when buried under this avalanche of material. Hermann Göring's capture by elements of the U.S. 36th Infantry Division on May 8, 1945, initiated his final confrontation with the mathematical reality he had dismissed so contemptuously. Initially defiant during questioning at interrogation facilities in Augsburg, he maintained German technical superiority had been overcome only through overwhelming numbers. His transfer to detention facilities at Mondorf-les-Bains, Luxembourg, brought systematic interrogation by American intelligence officers determined to document German strategic failures. Major Kenneth Heckler, U.S. Army historian, conducted extensive interviews with Göring during July and August 1945. The transcripts reveal Göring's gradual, painful acknowledgement of his catastrophic miscalculation regarding B-17 production. "I knew American industrial potential was substantial," Göring admitted during a July 18 interview. "But the execution exceeded even pessimistic projections. That Boeing facility in Seattle, one factory producing more heavy bombers monthly than our entire aviation industry managed. It was inconceivable to me in 1942. By 1944, it was destroying Germany from 25,000 feet. Göring expressed particular astonishment at American logistics and industrial coordination. Your ability to supply bomber forces across the Atlantic while simultaneously maintaining domestic production and supporting Pacific operations, this organizational achievement surpassed the mechanical production itself. We couldn't adequately supply forces 300 miles from German factories. You supplied armies 3,000 miles from American production while those same factories increased output monthly. The systematic efficiency was terrifying." During Nuremberg tribunal proceedings, prosecutors presented Göring with overwhelming statistical evidence of American B-17 production superiority. Charts showed Boeing alone produced more flying fortresses in 1944 than Germany manufactured total aircraft of all types. Films of Seattle assembly lines played while prosecutors listed German cities destroyed by bombers from those very production facilities. Göring's testimony on March 14, 1946, revealed his struggle comprehending the scale. "I believed American economic potential was significant, particularly in mass production of simple items. But strategic bombers are not automobiles. The technical complexity, the precision required, I never imagined they could achieve such production volumes while maintaining quality. That Americans built 12,731 B-17s in less than 4 years seemed physically impossible by any engineering assessment I understood. Prison psychologist Gustav Gilbert documented Göring's obsession with production statistics during Nuremberg imprisonment. He repeatedly requested detailed breakdowns of American bomber manufacturing, calculating ratios comparing single facilities to entire German industrial sectors. Gilbert noted Göring seemed particularly haunted by Boeing's Seattle plant, referring to it as that accursed factory that darkened European skies. When shown figures indicating America had produced 324,750 aircraft engines during the war versus Germany's 241,675, Göring sat in silence for several minutes before simply stating, "The mathematics are undeniable. We lost the industrial war before the military war reached its conclusion." The transformation scope from initial B-17 production to final wartime output remains staggering even 8 decades later. From 512 Flying Fortresses delivered in 1941, American factories produced 12,731 by war's end, a 25-fold increase in the world's most complex mass-produced machine. This represented not merely quantitative achievement but systematic superiority across every dimension of industrial organization, workforce development, quality control, and continuous improvement. The Boeing B-17 production program employed 156,000 Americans at peak across 3 primary manufacturers and hundreds of subcontractors. These workers didn't just assemble aircraft, they revolutionized heavy manufacturing itself. Statistical process control techniques developed for bomber production became standard across global industry. Automated assembly methods pioneered for B-17 wing construction influenced commercial aviation development for decades. The engineers who designed Flying Fortress production lines later designed commercial jet manufacturing systems. The quality inspectors who certified B-17s established certification standards still used in modern aviation. The financial dimensions defied economic convention. B-17 production consumed $4.7 billion in 1940s currency, equivalent to approximately $85 billion today. The program cost more than the Manhattan Project developing atomic weapons. Yet rather than bankrupting America, bomber production created unprecedented prosperity. Unemployment vanished completely by late 1942. Personal income doubled between 1941 and 1945. War bond purchases by workers themselves financed substantial portions of production expansion. The industrial infrastructure created for B-17 manufacturing became the foundation for post-war commercial aviation dominance. Germany consumed 37% of total industrial capacity for all aircraft production by 1944, yet produced fewer aircraft than America's heavy bomber output alone. Slave labor proved catastrophically counterproductive, sabotage was endemic, quality collapsed, productivity declined despite increased coercion. Actual German worker productivity decreased 18% between 1943 and 1945 while American productivity increased 41% through superior training, better tools, and systematic process improvement. Beyond raw production lay organizational excellence that German command structures could never match. The War Production Board coordinated 47,000 companies supporting B-17 manufacturing without creating bureaucratic paralysis. Real-time inventory systems tracked 340,000 separate part numbers across thousands of suppliers. MIT engineers developed navigation systems giving B-17s all-weather bombing capability. When combat revealed ball turret vulnerability to ground fire, Sperry redesigned armor protection within 45 days. When missions required higher altitude performance, Wright engineers developed improved engine superchargers within 90 days. This systematic adaptability proved as decisive as production volume. On October 15, 1946, hours before his scheduled execution, Hermann Göring wrote his final letter containing remarkable admission: the Americans achieved victory through industrial supremacy, not military prowess. We were defeated not by superior soldiers but by superior factories. The nation we dismissed as capable only of consumer goods manufacturing buried us under precision bombers. History will record our contempt for American production as the Third Reich's fatal miscalculation. We declared war on an industrial colossus while it slept peacefully. When it awakened to total war production, our defeat became mathematical certainty. His final recorded statement to psychologist Gilbert proved equally revealing: we awakened the sleeping giant, then mocked it as weak. When it arose in fury, backed by industrial might we never imagined possible, it crushed us systematically. They didn't just outproduce us, they revolutionized production itself. 12,731 B-17 flying fortresses. Each one a testament to our catastrophic underestimation. Each one helping destroy everything we built. Military historians universally consider American heavy bomber production, particularly the B-17 program, the decisive factor enabling Allied victory in Europe. Without the overwhelming material superiority it provided, D-Day invasion would have been impossible, strategic bombing campaign unsustainable, and European liberation inconceivable. Dr. Richard Overy, preeminent historian of the Air War, concluded definitively, the outcome was determined not by tactical brilliance or fighting determination, but by industrial capacity. The Allies won because American factories buried Axis forces under unstoppable material superiority. The B-17 Flying Fortress symbolized this triumph, 12,731 aircraft representing democracy's industrial answer to totalitarian aggression. Yet the B-17 production achievement's significance transcended military victory. It demonstrated democracy's superiority over dictatorship, voluntary cooperation's advantage over forced labor, diverse society's strength over racial ideology. The workers who built flying fortresses weren't slaves or conscripts but free citizens united in common purpose. Women, immigrants, minorities, the very groups Nazis considered inferior, achieved what totalitarian command could not. They didn't just meet an impossible production goal. They exceeded it while proving democratic mobilization could achieve what forced labor never could. Hermann Göring's dismissal of American B-17 production capacity stands as history's most catastrophic industrial miscalculation. His contemptuous laughter in October 1942 echoed through history as the sound of supreme arrogance meeting mathematical reality. The transformation from skepticism to 12,731 flying fortresses demonstrated that free societies, when facing existential threats, could achieve the genuinely impossible. The Reichsmarschall who mocked American bomber production died knowing American factories had produced more B-17s in 1944 alone than Germany manufactured total aircraft throughout the war. But the real defeat lay not in numbers but in meaning, proving free workers outproduce slaves, democratic cooperation exceeds totalitarian command, and diverse citizens united in righteous cause can achieve miracles. The B-17 flying fortresses rolling off Boeing's Seattle assembly lines every 2 hours weren't merely aircraft. They were democracy's thunderous answer to tyranny. Each one a 4-engine refutation of racial supremacy. Each one a 65,000-pound argument for freedom. Hermann Göring laughed at the idea of mass-producing strategic bombers. America responded by building 12,731 flying fortresses that turned his contempt into history's most complete industrial defeat. His laughter died somewhere over Germany, drowned out by the roar of Wright Cyclone engines carrying democracy's arsenal into the heart of the Third Reich, one precision bomber at a time, 12,731 times over. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.